stuff. What can figure it out? That's how it chooses you.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
I'm glad to see you this morning.
It's so lovely to see you. You are my friend.
It may not be morning for our listeners. I fully recognize that my time is not everybody's time.
That's good of you. A lot of people can't do that.
I love mornings, so I have trouble omitting that.
Yeah.
The veil is very thin for this podcast.
You make us sound so much cooler than we are. I love it.
That's my job.
In touch with the voices. Yes, exactly. Oh my God.
I do have something really fun to tell you about that I've been doing this week. There is a new Pandemic Legacy game.
Okay.
I say new. I don't know if that's true or not. For anyone who doesn't know, Pandemic is a very popular board game, widely available, created by Matt Leacock. It may hit too close to home for people right now, but it's basically a cooperative game where you work with everyone else who's playing against the game. And the goal is to eradicate diseases that are taking over the world. I just think it's really cool that we're playing Pandemic during the actual pandemic. I don't know why. It's like makes me seem like I'm a person who has perspective.
The act of playing it demonstrates my engagement with the world. And yeah.
And a legacy game is a concept within the world of tabletop gaming where it is a game that you only play through once. Mm-hmm. You rip cards up, you alter the game board, you make choices that you then cannot go back on. And it's usually something that takes many, many hours to play, right?
Yeah.
Pandemic, the game, has come out with a couple of other legacy games, which we've played and were wonderful. However, they just came out with one that they call them seasons in the pandemic world. So they had done, I believe, season 1 and 2. And now they've come out with season 0. Mm. And season 0 is set in the 60s in the backdrop of the Cold War. And so you are doctors turned spies.
Oh, God.
We've been putting on a playlist of late 60s music.
Nice.
While we play. And it's Tim and my cousin and I playing. So it's spies, but your mission is to uncover this Soviet disease that they want to release into the world as a biological weapon.
All right.
It is a blast. I won't give any spoilers for it, but you have a passport that has several aliases you create so you can name them and they have particular roles in the game. The best part is you're given sort of non-gendered photos to use for your character. And you use the same base photo for each one. They give you stickers to create a disguise.
Oh!
Silly mustaches, hats, beards.
Nice pair of thick horn-rimmed glasses.
Yeah. Can I just tell you a few of our alias names?
Oh, yes.
So my first one is Brenda McBrenda.
Sure.
My second one is Normal Peoples. Mm-hmm. Tim's is Elias McRealPerson.
It's like the end of The Good Place where Michael Realman.
Yes, exactly. But it's great fun. It's a very challenging game, so I don't recommend it if you're new to board games. You know, it's a $60 purchase, so it's not a cheap thing, but it's well worth it. And I think we're probably going to get 20 to 30 hours of gameplay time out of it.
Yeah, and that sounds like a lot of fun. I get so anxious about spy stuff because I'm so bad at remembering lies I've told that I'm like, I can't. The truth is just easier. I can't remember all the lies. Makes me. I'm like, wait, am I lying to you in this way, or is this the collection of lies I'm telling? I can't access the right lie file right now. Shit.
Who have I pretended to be with you again? I can't remember.
That's right. And I've never been a spy. That's just how I operate in the world as a person. Wait, who am I when I talk to you? I forget.
I love that.
I have a surprise for myself. So after we spoke last week, I went and purchased Literary Witches Oracle!
Yay!
So now we have it to access whatever we want to access. And also, what's that one? What's that second? Is that second one for you? Is that a second copy of it for you that's a belated birthday present? Oh my God.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so this exists for you whenever I can mail it to you.
That's great. Should we pull a card for the episode before we start?
Let me open mine. I was just going to say, I was so inspired by you talking about it, and I went online and looked it up, and I love every single woman in this list. Even the ones I don't know, I'm sure I love. And they also, so it's the literary witches, and then it's witches materials, which includes spell stuff and familiars and so there's, cat, wolf, dog, boar, all kinds of stuff. So I'm just going to choose from the ladies today.
We had mentioned that in our smidgen on a spring reading list for witches. These are Oracle Tarot cards based on the book Literary Witches by
Taisia Kitaiskaya. So I'm picking. I'm just going to fan these and move my hand across them. And I'm not looking at the faces, and you tell me when to stop, and I'll touch that one. I'll grab that one.
This is our inspiration for this episode. Okay, stop.
Okay, this is it. Charlotte Perkins Gilman.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, so Charlotte Perkins Gilman is an American short story and I think novel writer. Yellow Wallpaper is a novel. It's a short one. The Yellow Wallpaper is about a woman who basically goes crazy locked in a room with yellow wallpaper and sees things moving in the wallpaper. But let's see what she has to say about them here. Charlotte Perkins Gilman. That's what she looks like.
Love her with the eyes.
In front of the yellow wallpaper. She is freedom. So we're going to think about oppression, what frees you, and the systems at work, which is very related to what I'm going to talk about today. Charlotte Perkins Gilman is best known for The Yellow Wallpaper, a story inspired by the disastrous, sexist rest cure prescribed for her postpartum depression. In her day, Gilman was also a famous social critic, giving popular lectures on economic and social reform, and for her unconventional life choices. Her utopian novels and nonfiction are worth revisiting for their visions of a cooperative society and the place of gender roles in economics.
That's great.
Okay, so that's her today. I'm going to keep her up here so she can be around. So I've been looking for a different part-time job, and I had an interview yesterday for pet sitting, which is very straightforward and not a problem. And it's in-home pet sitting, so it would be a lot of overnights. And I was like, well, I can study while I'm there. I can work on other things while I'm there. This might be a really good fit. And we went through literally half an hour of a conversation, at which point they told me how much they paid. And I was like, you assholes, $40. $40 for a 24-hour period during which I am not allowed to be away from the dog for more than 3 to 4 hours. And I have to be available via text on my phone with the owners to answer any questions they have or whatever. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? But I was very professional, and I was like, yeah, that's absolutely not a fair exchange, so I'm no longer interested in this position. And, we left it. But it was a young white man, and he and his wife have run this business for a little bit, and this is how they're getting rich. They're paying people shit wages. I'm sure that they're getting at least 3 times what they're paying out per day. And I was just so frustrated. I was like, and these are people who probably consider themselves liberal. They moved here from Texas. They probably really like it here. They think they found a community, and that's all great. But they have zero interest in applying their moral politics, which may be a contradiction in terms, I'm not sure, but applying their ethos to their business dealings.
Yeah.
It's the same people who are like, oh, I'm completely progressive. Oh yeah, my stock portfolio is entirely oil and gas. But what's the problem with that? That doesn't matter. Don't look at that. Don't look at the man behind the curtain,
Lots of hypocrisy in that.
So much hypocrisy in it. And so I had yet another encounter with that, and I was like, God damn it. Okay, the search continues.
As you and I make our way in the world, we need to start using the phrase, you'll be hearing about this on my podcast.
Well, yes, absolutely.
I feel like there's a lot of power there, Teresa.
My listeners are going to be very interested in this. No, keep talking. My listeners are going to want to hear what you have to say. Lord have mercy. I'm laughing because it just hurts. It's just such a poignant example of how people get away with paying people nothing and requiring so much and paying nothing. And it's Boulder County. I mean, you throw a stone, you hit a millionaire in this county. It's ridiculous. But this is how they all got rich.
Yeah, there's this lie that everyone's gotten rich by pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, right? This is the American dream. And it took me a long time to realize that that's just simply not true in a lot of cases.
It's a complete lie. There is somebody out there who grew up in our economic circumstances, the economic circumstances we grew up in, who's managed to do it. And that's great. Good for them. That's amazing. That should be celebrated. That's hard work. That's intelligence. That's, consistent application of effort. It's all the things we like to see. But for every one of those, there's 15,000 whose parents are wealthy, whose parents' parents are wealthy. And if you go back far enough, your parents' parents' parents resources are based on extracting it from some other population.
Yep.
Wealth is based on unfair exchange. I'm completely done with it. So I've been living that reality this week a little bit too, which has been fun. So I've been listening to episodes, and last week I said that N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth trilogy is, quote, about a creature who lives at the center of the earth. That's like the tiniest part of that book. It's actually about how groups of people treat other groups of people as less than human. That's the actual content of the book. But I took this tiny piece and said it was about that, and I just wanted to go back and say that's absolutely not true. It's about so much more and so much more relevant things than that. So if you hear the Jules Verne episode and you thought, what the fuck? This is my explanation of that what the fuck. You said last week, I said Jules Verne was a sad boy, and you said you think the kids are calling them soy boys now. And so I had to look that up, because I'm a nerd and I don't like to use slang unless I know what, like the context or whatever. And I think it's more pejorative than I want to be about Jules Verne, because I love him very much. And apparently soy boy connotations are pretty close to cuck, like legitimately.
Oh, I had no idea.
And I'm not about shaming male femininity. So I just wanted to take, that's not correct. And I take that back and I'll never say it again. So learning is a process, everybody.
Thank you for giving that some context.
So sad boy Jules Verne, not soy boy. That's certainly not everything that was wrong with that episode, but that's all I'm going to correct, because if we spend time talking about everything that's wrong with it, we'll just be here all day.
Hey, everybody, this is the podcast It Chooses You. I'm Claire Patton.
And I'm Teresa Sparks, and we talk about things we enjoy that we hope you'll enjoy.
There you go. It's simple. Please download, subscribe, like, and rate our podcast. Thank you so much.
Yes, do all those things. Thank you. So, Claire, today I'm going to tell you about the Barkley Marathons.
I do not know about the Barkley Marathons. As we've established, I am a couch person.
Yeah, I am also a couch person, but I'm a couch person / anthropologist, and I enjoy exploring the culture of those who are running people. And also Jeffrey, who is the podcast's greatest fan and cheerleader, texts us regularly when he listens to episodes, and he sort of tells us what he thinks or has ideas or thoughts and feelings. Hi, Jeffrey. I know you're listening to this. Hi.
Hello, Jeffrey. We love you.
And I was thinking about him, and I think he's probably the one who told me that they exist, because how would I have ever... why would that have come across my radar if not for Jeffrey? And I watched a documentary on it, and I need to tell you about it. I need to tell you about them. My sources this week are a couple of different articles from Outside Magazine, which, unsurprisingly, not a magazine I subscribe to, as you might expect. These are all available online. One of the articles is called Notorious, and it's by Charlie Engel. I reference that one pretty extensively. It's a really, really good article. Also, there's a documentary from 2015 called The Barkley Marathons, The Race That Eats Its Young. An article called Everything You Need to Know About the Barkley Marathons by Andrew Dawson. I think that's also for Outside Magazine. And a film called Where Dreams Go to Die that's available on YouTube that covers a 2-year period of time where ultra runner Gary Robbins tried to complete the Barkley Marathons. And that's on YouTube now. There's also an article called Good Luck Morons, Lazarus Lake and His Impossible Race. It's by Sarah Estes for Bitter Southerner. So that's where I'm getting most of my info. Like I said, I've been thinking a lot about Jeffrey lately, because in addition to being a delightful person, he is our cheerleader. And in the spirit of ultra running, I'm going to tell you about these marathons, plural. So among people who run...
Yeah, please provide any context you can, because... I am, let's just say, not a runner.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an anthropology report for sure. I had a teacher once who said, what's the difference between anthropology and sociology? Do you know this one? No. Anthropology is we study them. Sociology is we study us. And so I'm very consciously making them and me us. It's happening over there. None of it is happening right here. You know, the collection of people who run marathons and then back-to-back marathons and 100-mile races and shit like that are a group of people whose psychological makeup is quite far from Claire's and mine. And among those people, the Barkley Marathons have legendary status. It's a very strange race, okay? The strangeness starts with the entry process. For most other races, you pay a fee or you prove you've run or placed in another known ultra running race and you're in. That's all. You show up, you run, and go home. But the Barkley requires you to discover a secret email address that you have to write to ask to be allowed to participate. It requires that you submit an essay on the right minute of the right day that explains why you should be one of the chosen few.
What?
For example, an unofficial Barkley website suggests hopefuls contact the race director at an address from 1995 entry form. The director, the site adds, has since moved. If the race organizer, a man whose name is Gary Cantrell, but who goes by the name Lazarus Lake when conducting race business, if he decides you're in, you're in. Okay, so let's just stop there for a second, because this is a person who has a real name and lets his real name be known. But when you're there and when you're talking about the race and when you talk about Lazarus, this is Lazarus's race.
Mm-hmm.
It's the foundation of some sort of mythology that we'll be exploring, right? And who what is that? It's like an alter ego talking about spies and their other identities, right? This thing is so weird. The race organizer adopts a different identity while he's dealing with it.
Yeah, he has an alternate personality. I'm sorry, Gary's not here right now. This is Lazarus.
Yeah, exactly. He puts on maybe a slightly different voice too, something like that.
Yeah, how would Lazarus talk?
I mean, I see no evidence that he talks in any way other than he would be very tired. I think Lazarus. He's been through some stuff in the last 3 days. Okay,
Lazarus is fucking exhausted.
He's real tired. He needs some carbs and a nap. If Gary Cantrell decides you can run the race, you can run the race. No other criteria exist.
And maybe you'll get into this, but do people just figure out what the email address and the time is through word of mouth? Like, are they intentionally dropping the information to a key few people that will then disseminate it? Or are there message boards? Is there like a Reddit thread?
Maybe it's all of those things. Definitely the email address, at least for a few years, didn't change because I found evidence in my research that people who had run it before have passed the email address on to people who wanted to run it in the future.
So it's like a credit union for runners.
Yeah, it's like a credit union for runners. Sure. Absolutely.
Well, the thing is, in terms of marketing, it's remarkably effective because I suddenly find myself having, run, God, probably 3 miles total in my entire life, wanting to run this race because there's some club I can't belong to, and fuck you.
Yeah, I mean, that's really it. And I think in a couple of interviews, there is the sense that this is, I mean, they don't say protecting the culture, but you definitely have to be in. You have to be in to get here. But not necessarily. I mean, you could just have done a lot of hard work finding the email address or, manipulated the right person at the right time to get it.
Yeah.
Because Gary Cantrell also says that a large variety of fitness levels try and run it. He's like, some people have no business being here.
Yeah.
And other people have won, the highest prestige ultra running races in the world. So.
Well, and you don't want people to hurt themselves, like I certainly would. Should I attempt this tomorrow?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and say that's incorrect. I really think the point of this is for people to hurt themselves.
All right.
In all kinds of ways.
Okay, I want to hear about this. Keep going.
I like that you projected your empathy onto others. That makes me happy.
Well, it's more about self-preservation. I'm like, if some idiot let me run a race tomorrow and, I somehow found the mental energy to commit myself to that, I would probably die. And if they were decent people, they might feel responsible. So that's what I assumed was going on. Please protect me from my own delusion, people.
That's right. Yeah, I think we're in a much more slanting toward libertarian environment here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, your choices are your choices. And if you try and do this and you're not ready and you get hurt, that's on you.
Yep.
The race only accepts about 40 participants a year. I think about 10 years ago, there were 6 entrants for every spot, and now there are something like 10 entrants for every spot, and it goes up and up and up as the notoriety of the race grows.
Okay.
He's been doing it for 30 years. And so you can kind of trace the development of ultra running as a thing people do through this race in some ways. And he himself was an ultra runner in his youth and continues to run even though he's in terrible shape, he says. Entrants pay a $1.60 entry fee, which has no meaning. It's just a number. They also are required to send an item of clothing specified by Cantrell as part of their entry fee. 1 year it was flannel shirts, and he said he did that because he didn't want to have to buy flannel shirts for the rest of his life. And so he made him send flannel shirts so he would have clothes.
Okay, sure.
And people who are running the races for the first time are called Barkley Virgins, which, okay, but they are required to send a license plate from their home territory. Bring it. I mean, this is why I'm attracted to it, because it's in a culture I'm not in, and yet it also is clearly an art project of some kind, which I feel like I understand. So, like, that's my entryway into this.
Yeah.
So the field consists of runners of all abilities, like I said. There are elite runners, and there are people, he says, have no business being there. And this is especially true for whoever receives bib number 1. Whoever gets bib number 1 is known as the human sacrifice, which is, also known as the person Cantrell thinks has the least chance of finishing. Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
This is starting to sound like a fraternity or something, or some kind of hazing.
I think that is an accurate assessment. Hazing, right? Because it's people who want to be in a group and the people who are already in that group making it very hard for them to be accepted as part of the group, right? I think hazing is appropriate. Yeah, neither one of us are going to do this. I have this dream that, like, I'm a different person sometimes, and I'm like, well, maybe I could if I... No. You're 44 years old. You do the things you're going to do already. Charlie Engel, who wrote for Outside Magazine, I cited him at the top. He talks about it like this. He says, quote, "Now, I've run a dozen marathons and all kinds of adventure races in more than 35 countries, including Ironman World Championship, the Eco Challenge. Once I even ran, it's the Marathon du Sable, the 4,500-mile race across the Sahara Desert." He says...
Stop. All right, I just want to come back to it. So you didn't say 45 miles.
No.
You didn't even say 450 miles.
No.
You said 4,500 miles.
Yeah.
Are they in cars? Is this a car-based marathon?
Oh, wouldn't that be great? Let's you and I start that sport.
Ultra driving.
Or, as it's known in my family, the annual family road trip.
This is true. Okay. I don't want to distract us from, but Jesus Christ, 4,500 miles.
4,500 miles. So that race is done in something like 10 days, and you do it in stages, and you run.
How do you even do it in 10 days?
I mean, it's probably, maybe it's more than 10 days.
I mean, give me 100 days. I'm not doing that. I can't do that in 100 days.
I love how appalled you are. Oh, God.
It is such a marvelous world that people do something that I consider so out of the realm of possibility for myself.
There's a story of a runner who was running that race who, like, if there's a sandstorm, and there frequently are, your instructions are to hunker down and wait until it passes, because otherwise you will get lost. And he didn't hunker down, and he did get lost, and he got lost so badly that he ended up in, like, Algeria, 140 miles off course or something like that. I mean, it was just insane. He was gone for 9 days. He had to, like, kill bats and drink their blood to survive. It was quite a story. Anyway, if you're interested in crazy shit like this, go look up that marathon, because it's crazy. So Charlie Engel says he felt that submitting a resume boasting of running accomplishments was, like, too ordinary for his application to this event. Mm-hmm. So he says, "I opted for weird. My application contained language like, 'My name is Charlie, and I am addicted to suffering. I have a long and storied history of making poor decisions. As I understand it, the Barkley course is very well marked and should be easy to follow.'" And he says it worked. Several days later, he received the bad news. And this is the acceptance letter. This is the acceptance letter that this race sends out. "Our heartfelt condolences on your recent selection into the Barkley Marathons field for 2010. Even though the odds were all in your favor, with 6 applicants for every slot, in any drawing someone must lose, and this time it was you. Should you come up with any plausible excuse to avoid the painful failure that is the Barkley, please let us know as soon as possible. As incredible as it might seem, those other 5 people still want your slot. Otherwise, there is a very bad thing waiting for you."
It's a great sense of humor.
You heard me say marathons, plural, so let me tell you what this race entails. Runners and their support crew gather at Frozen Head State Park, which is 24,000 acres on Brushy Mountain near Wartburg, Tennessee, on a weekend as close to April Fool's Day as Cantrell can set it. So it could be happening right now. as we record. Like, they could literally be running it right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no set start time. Cantrell blows a conch shell sometime between midnight and noon, and that tells runners they have an hour to get to the starting line. The race begins when Cantrell lights the ceremonial cigarette.
I think Jeffrey told us about this one on his ultra running episode. I think he mentioned it.
Yeah, he may have. That's Jeffrey Loves Running, I think. That's from last spring. But just imagine, like, you're there, you know this race is hard, there's a huge mythos around it, you're so excited to be a part of it, you're nervous, you know it's going to be hard, and you're trying to sleep. But you also have to hear a conch shell that could blow at any time in the night.
Mm-hmm.
Or the morning after you get up.
Mm-hmm.
One of the guys who wrote an article about it said that he heard a conch shell like 3 times that night before it was actually blown.
Right.
He would like hear it and he would start awake and open his tent to nothing but stillness and quiet.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, oh, great. It hasn't even started yet and it's already in my head.
Yeah, and you're not getting a good night's sleep, right?
Yeah, you're setting out like having not rested and a little insane. In the film Where Dreams Go to Die, I think he didn't blow the conch shell until just before noon the next day, so people stayed up all night for nothing.
Oh.
And that too is like, oh God, it's so deeply, deeply upsetting. The race consists of 5 20-mile loops through this state park. You have to complete them in 60 hours, and no one loop can take longer than 12 hours, or you're disqualified. So you're running day and night because the course isn't lit except by moonlight or starlight. At that time of year, temperature in that part of Tennessee at that altitude can get below freezing at night. Runners have to touch the yellow gate as they leave for each loop. When they complete a loop, they have to touch the gate again to officially finish it. And then once they touch the gate, they're allowed to go to their crew, shove some food in their face, cover their blisters, wipe blood off their legs, recover, before they have to get back out there.
And mentally steel themselves for the torture ahead.
Yeah. And the faster you finish a loop, the more time you theoretically have to recover before you have to go out again. The course isn't marked, and it's mostly overland, not on trails. There are trails in the park, but the race does not make use of them very much.
Of course not.
Of course not. Why would you do that? People who run it say the physical test isn't actually the distance, which is significant, but these are ultra runners, so like the distance is not the real issue. They say the issue is the elevation change, because completing the Barkley is equivalent to climbing up and down Mount Everest twice.
Woo! As far as elevation gain goes.
Yes. Gain and loss.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So you're either grinding up a hill or you're grinding down a hill, right? And uphill and downhill are much harder on your muscles than running flat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brushy Mountain also has a very, very thick understory because that land was, entirely cut down, essentially. There's no old growth forests left on the east coast of the United States. And so when you cut down the old growth, the understory comes back very strongly. And the trees are back now, so it is wooded, but they're much younger trees than they would have been back in the day. And so this understory has really heavy thorns. It's just a tangle of briars that it's impossible to get through at places.
Right. The earth itself is trying to grab you as you're trying to fly.
That's right. You're trying to fly. Here, let me hook briars into your shins. So climbs at the Barkley often hit like 2,000 feet from valley floor to mountaintop in about a mile. It's a gradient of nearly 40%. Like they're essentially running up and down Cooper's Hill over and over and over again. To prove you run the course, because it's not marked, and spectators are corralled to 2 specific places. So mostly you're on your own. Like there are a couple places where you can like see humans and be cheered on and that sort of thing. But mostly it's just you out in the woods. So to prove you ran the course, you have to find books that are hidden throughout the landscape. He hides 9 to 13 books each year, and when you get there, you have to tear out the page that corresponds to your bib number to hand over when you finish a loop to prove you've done it. The books Cantrell chooses for his checkpoints have titles like Death Walks the Woods and The Road Not Taken.
Of course. So we've got the scavenger hunt element to it.
Yes, scavenger hunt element. And runners aren't allowed to use GPS or any devices, and they have only a really short time before the race starts to study the hand-drawn map of the race that Cantrell provides and try and like map it onto actual topo maps of the area that they bring themselves.
Uh-huh.
The master route map is like only vaguely, like it's correct, but it's things like, you know, they make jokes about how people from where I'm from give directions. It's like, look down, see that briar-choked steep hillside? That's called the zipline trail. Go down and bear only a little to the left. Right? It's like that. Checkpoints are roughly indicated on the map, but it's not precise. It's like just enough that it makes it possible.
Uh-huh.
That idea of it being just possible is what draws these people to it.
I'm sure, you know, if there's anything I know, it's the motivations of an ultra runner. But there's one thing I know. It's ultra running. But I would assume that once you hit a certain point and you've accomplished so much that you're looking for different kinds of challenges, right? And this one sounds even more mentally challenging and physically challenging. And if you're a runner, there may be part of you that of course enjoys pushing, right? And so this is a different way to push yourself, and it's probably really fun for the people who can do it.
There's definitely something that is about the limits of human endurance here.
Yeah.
The other thing it's really important that everyone understand, because this is the thing that absolutely killed me. Like, nothing so far is the thing that has killed me, but this is what kills me, okay? No one wins the Barkley. You can only finish it or not.
I thought you were going to say you can only survive.
So in about 30 years, only 15 people have finished.
Wow.
Over 1,000 people have run it, and only 15 have finished.
That's half a person a year.
Yeah.
Not to show off my mathematical skills, but...
Don't do math on this podcast. You know how I hate it when you do math.
Math.
You know how Claire is, just all the time doing math.
100% mathematics, 50% running.
Did you just describe not you?
Yeah.
I've given you almost all the context, but the last piece of context about the race itself is that you run one loop clockwise and then the next loop counterclockwise. So you don't ever really get comfortable with the loops that you're running. And so you're changing directions, and also like your brain is very tired and your body's very tired. And so as you fall into exhaustion, you're also changing directions. And people, like, they legit get lost. Apparently one person ended up in the next county, like just got totally lost on loop one and it, like, came back for his first loop 32 hours after he set out. So there's a British ultra runner named James Mace, and he's been there apparently more than once. Like, people want to go back. Which is the other thing that is somehow a key to the psychology of these people, is that if they fail and they have this horrible experience, they then like, no, but I can do it next year. Like,
right.
Which to me is like, oh, you're just completely embodying the idea of samsara. Like, this was terrible. Let me do it again.
They're really driven people.
Yes. Well, and the article I like the best by Charlie Engel, he is apparently a recovering drug addict. He calls himself an addict who runs and a runner who writes. And so there's this compulsion, right? You can channel it. If you're lazy like we are, you channel it into drugs because they're much easier to attain and acquire.
Yeah, I mean, that or television or like Big Macs, you know?
Exactly. There are so many more easy choices to make if you're an addictive personality. Anyway, he says, James Mace, we just got lost. Like, finding every single book, we just got lost. Like, the instructions are like, to locate the first book, we have to listen for the frogs in this particular pond. And it's pitch black and we're already off course. He said it was just awful. It dismantled people. And I love that. Like, go down this, like, listen for the frogs in this pond. When you hear the frogs, the book is, you know, like, I just love that stuff. Englishman Mark Williams was the first person to complete the race, and he did that in 1995, 9 years after the race was instituted. The race happened like 8 times before anyone finished it. Like, they did it for 8 years before anyone finished.
Right.
That's how hard it is. He said that he had to lie down 4 times during his second to last loop because he was hallucinating quite badly and falling asleep on my feet.
This is my nightmare.
My dead mom started talking to me, and I thought perhaps I would take a nap at that point.
Yeah.
Gary Cantrell, the race organizer, he doesn't really expect anyone to finish. Like, and apparently he tells you bluntly that you'll quit. And when you do quit, and almost everyone does, he's there and he pats you on the back and he says, good try. And then he plays taps on a bugle so that everyone in listening distance knows that the Barkley has claimed another victim.
Does old Lazarus himself ever run this thing, or?
So I think he ran it. I don't think he's ever entered the race he organizes, but he and a group of friends when he was still young, and he's a runner himself, an ultra runner himself. He's in his 60s or 70s now. When they were young enough to be healthy and be able to do this with, a little more safety than a brittle-boned old person might expect, he and other runner friends would have sort of friend reunions over a weekend at this state park, and the kids would be in playpens, and the people who weren't running would hang out at camp and have fun, and they would run through the woods. I like vocabulary, but it has its own vocabulary, of course, that's developed over the years. The course includes directions to places like Rat Jaw, Big Hell, Raw Dog Falls, Testicle Spectacle, The Humps, Son of a Bitch Ditch.
Love it.
Which is a 10-foot wide, 10-foot deep gouge in the forest, and Leonard's Butt Slide, which propels you down a 45-degree gradient through several hundred feet of mud and sawbriars.
Poor Leonard. What happened to him?
No, that's it. These places are a lot of times are named after people who there's one, I think it's James Kelly. He ended up falling asleep at the top of a mountain, and from then on it was called Kelly's Upper Camp or something like that. Upper Camp Kelly. I mean, it's very much how you create a culture, right? It's only these certain people can do it. Only these certain people are fucking interested in doing it.
Yeah. And it's based around all places that are named after where people bid it, you know?
Yes. So the quote is, they're all very real places that have great significance to Barkley runners, right? It's like camp. It's oh, that's the spot where whoever kissed whoever, or that's where I broke my arm,
I just love the idea that there's families camping there in the summer, and they're playing on Satan's anus crest or whatever, and just picking flowers and...
But they don't know it's called that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best part.
There's a new addition or a recent addition to the course that's called The Bad Thing, which is what Cantrell's email to Charlie Engel that I read at the top hinted at, apparently.
Right, there's a bad thing waiting for you or something like that, right?
So it's yet another nearly mile-long ascent that climbs 1,700 feet.
Ooh.
So it adds about 45 minutes of disaster punishment to each loop. And to reach it, you have to pass through a partially flooded tunnel carved into the earth beneath the abandoned Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, which the park butts up against that property.
I don't know. It's like the Goonies, if the whole time they were in the Goonies, they had to run. The tunnel pushed me over the edge for some reason.
Yeah.
But there's no freaking rich stuff at the end. There's just more punishment.
I love the fact that you are boy, that all sounds terrible, and you have to run the whole time. It's doable if you're not also making me run. Right. The running itself is torture enough for some of us.
That's just my distinct perspective on the matter.
No, I love it. Cantrell says it's easy to design an impossible race, and it's easy to make a race anyone can finish, but it's really hard to find that point where impossibility is just so close. So he's in pursuit of that line. He also says in another thing, the promise of comfort is always alluring, but the power of human resilience is only realized through true pain and suffering.
Yeah, but I feel like if I met this guy, he'd be really mean to me. I mean, I don't know, he could be a perfectly nice guy, but anyone capable of this is I feel like would be mean to me. I don't know.
I think this might be the seed of my unease with this, is that people who believe pain and suffering in themselves have led them to great changes and positive changes in their life and deeply understanding themselves. I get real nervous when those people are comfortable inflicting pain and suffering on others because it will help them. It gets a little iffy for me.
This is totally my take. Whatever. I feel like there's enough pain and suffering. I don't want to go seek out more. But, that's just my perspective on life. But hey, if they find it fulfilling, nobody's asked to do this race, they're volunteering to do it. So
I also looked up stats, and of course, most ultra runners in the world are white men who have the economic resources and the available time to do it.
Yeah.
So, if you have a lot of things handed to you, you got to really seek out the thing that's going to be tough. And this is what they've chosen.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the beginning of this race at the end of my description of it. And I think this will lead to a different kind of conversation. So Cantrell says that he had the idea for the race after he read a book about the escape of James Earl Ray, the person who murdered Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. James Earl Ray escaped from Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in 1977, so the penitentiary that is right next to the state park where this race is held. He escaped in 1977. He was gone about 2 days, and he made it 8 miles. So, like 48 plus hours, he only made it 8 miles.
Yeah, so 3 times farther than I would have gotten. Okay, what's your point?
Yeah. Cantrell says when he was reading that book, he decided that he himself could have made it at least 100 miles. So, are you uneasy right now?
Yeah, a little bit. Oh, I just don't know where it's going, so I got my suspicious glasses on.
Yes. So, me too. So, what's that about? Rather than relief that this man was recaptured, this murderer was recaptured, right? From reports at the time, James Earl Ray was completely scratched to shit. He was freezing cold, and he was grateful to have been found. They found him face down in the underbrush, basically. And Cantrell just thought, I could do better than that. And when he's asked about that genesis and whether the races are meant as a tribute to that murderer, he says, hell no. He wanted to make fun of the guy for being such a pansy, he says. It's a direct quote.
That completely misses the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, it's odd that that's the takeaway.
And maybe all that says is that this person and us have very different constitutions, right?
What's striking me right now is really different values.
Yeah. If I were to do a sort of power and privilege reading of this race, I think this is how it might go. So the secret email address and the fact that most people get it from someone else who has run the race means that it's likely that you're going to ensure some sort of homogeneity of the people who are able to run this, who know about it, who want to do it, and then who have access, right? A lot of people know about it now because a couple documentaries have been made and there are articles and sort of it's in the, if you and I know about this thing, people who run definitely know about this thing now.
Yeah.
But even if they know about it, they can't enter unless they get information from someone who's already run it. And the people who have the email address don't necessarily want to give it out because there are only 40 spots. And they might want to run it again, right? So they have a resource. They have a resource to protect at that point, right? And then there's a great couple of articles that came out recently. Ultra runner Ben Chan, who lives in New York, he took part in a virtual race that Cantrell organized. Mm-hmm. And he posted a photo of himself wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt alongside a post talking about how he had been subject to racial slurs while he was running. It's sort of a virtual event. Like, he ran the miles for the race in Brooklyn, but the race was like a virtual race across Tennessee or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so they're just keeping in touch, like posting their times and where they ran and, like, I don't know, GPS evidence that they did it or something.
Yeah, they're just trying to stay connected.
Right. And he said, it was tough. It's like that happens. And his wife, who is a Black woman, receives much worse when she runs. But by the next morning, Chen noticed that the post had been deleted. And there was a note from Cantrell that said, I am 1000% in agreement, but this is not a political site.
Is the site involve people and happen in the world? Because
yes.
Politics has come to find us, my friends.
Right? It's a little bit like, so you agree that racism and violence are a problem, but let's not ruin our fun by talking about it here. This is where you and I are really, really close to the major and are part of, let me rephrase, where you and I are a major stumbling block for racial justice and equity. Because, oh yes, that's true, but let's not ruin our good time. We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it in a different way. We'll talk about it in another place. We in our privilege get to choose when we talk about the injustice we benefit from.
Yeah.
Which is like, is it ever going to change if that's true? Right? Like, how is it going to change? We might be willing to admit, and a lot of white people are willing to admit that we have an unjust upper hand granted to us at birth by virtue of nothing about us personally, just our skin color.
Yeah.
But we don't often hesitate to enforce silence about that fundamental reality whenever we want to break from thinking about it. like it's another example of the fact that white comfort is more important than Black lives.
Yep.
Yeah. And I say that with humor in my voice, not because it's funny, but because, finding other people's only slightly, I'm not great at this stuff, right? But if I find someone who's slightly worse at it than me, I get real happy, right? Because I want to feel like I'm doing it. I want to feel like I'm working through this stuff somehow.
We like to feel better than our peers, for sure.
This is not to say anything about Cantrell as a person. You mentioned that you thought he might be mean to you if he met you, but there are a couple of articles that are about getting to know him, and in one of them he talks about he might have been out on a run on his own property, and he found a dog that had been shot and left to die, and he carried the dog back to his house and removed the bullet and nursed the dog back to health with the help of a vet. I mean, he's not a mountain man. He went to a vet,
Mm-hmm.
But now that's his dog. So that's the kind of thing he does. And shutting down discussions about racial justice and equity in places where he has a whole lot of power is also something he does. And so the difference between those two things, it's on the one hand, he's being Gary Cantrell, who found a wounded animal and saved it. And on the other, he's being a white man who runs an organization who doesn't want to make any of the people who partake in his organization feel uncomfortable.
We're complex creatures, aren't we?
So Cantrell said he actually deleted Ben Chan's post because of the vitriol it inspired. So he's like, oh, I agree, but it made racists unhappy, and we can't have unhappy racists, essentially. That just doesn't work. Yeah, in white supremacist society, the rile of the people being called on something that's real is somehow more important than the suffering of the people who are calling them on it, right? And there we are again. And what's interesting is in my whiteness right now, I'm not trying to ruin a funny story, right? So I'm doing the same thing that he's doing.
Yeah.
I'm just as white. But I just wanted to say, the reason this, and I texted you a few days ago, and I was like, shit, I'm so bummed because I thought I was going to tell this story, and it turns out, that there's all of this other stuff. But the thing is, there's always that other stuff. It's only I succeed in convincing myself it doesn't exist because it's more comfortable for me. So I'm not better than him. Yeah.
I mean, if we were to write a book about white privilege, it would be called It Turns Out. It is there. It's there in everything all the time. I am surprised where it went, but on the other hand, in retrospect, I'm not, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's oh, of course. And I was thinking about it in a larger way, and thinking that touching in to this horrifying reality that underpins our entire lives, touching into that and coming out of it, and really managing our ability to touch in and come out, we're essentially inoculating ourselves the more we do it, right? And so it sucked, but I received an inoculation this week. For now, it feels useful. Anyway, so that is the complex, super interesting and weird story of the Barkley Marathons and Gary Cantrell, aka Lazarus Lake.
Wow. That was a ride.
Yeah. It's like psychological horror, right? The question is, what is happening here?
The whole story I was feeling wow, this is just a mental state I'm having trouble understanding. But then when you brought in the social justice piece, it's oh yeah, I'm just like those other white people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I understand them now. I found a connection point. It's not a pleasant one, but here's a connection point.
Right. It's oh, right. Running is your escape. Because you have one. Because you're white.
Thank you so much for that story, Teresa. That was really fascinating.
I'm really glad you liked it. I had a very challenging and interesting and fun time looking into it.
Hey, this one goes out to Jeffrey, one of the best people we know, period.
Yes, one of the best people we know and the greatest supporter our podcast has. Jeffrey, we love you.
Thank you all so much for listening. We will be back in the next episode. It'll be a smidgen, and it's going to be a good time, so please join us.
Thanks, everyone. Like, comment, subscribe, download, etc., and we will talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Testing. Great. Thank you for listening to It Chooses You. Your hosts are Teresa Sparks and Claire Patton. Our theme song is by Bobby Dart. If you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us an email at itchoosesyoupodcast@gmail.com.